If Roslyn was David Trickey, I'm Rita Harris and Peter Fugel right now, because they're the course leads for the Managed Leadership course. I'm one of the course tutors on that, along with colleague Leslie French. But I'm going to present this on behalf of Peter and Rita. So, first thing to know is that there is this course, and if you're doing the therapist course or the supervisor's course, the thing to know is that you will be getting world-class tuition from two of the best universities in the world, and all the feedback that we get from trainees who go through the course is that this opens their mind to other ways of thinking, and the majority changes their practice individually. But this is more than just about changing individual clinicians' practice. This is about improving the whole service. So if you as a therapist go back with all these great new ideas that you want to implement in your practice, and you want to share them with other people that you work with so that they can improve the quality of what they do, unless you've got someone high up in the organisation supporting you to do that, it will have perhaps a big impact on your own work, but minimal impact on the whole organisation. And one of the things that CYP IAPT wants to do is to change and improve the whole system of CAMS. A big ambition to change the whole system of CAMS, not just NHS, but local authority and voluntary sector as well. And in order to do that, you've got to have good managers and leaders supporting, encouraging, facilitating that change. And what this course does is to try and give managers and leaders within services those kind of skills. So the aims of the course are these. So it's to enable service leaders to make the necessary services in line with Future in Mind, which we've mentioned a few times now, which is the policy document about this is what you need to do to improve your services. This is what all commissioners, clinical networks and NHS England CAMS team are trying to support people to do. And backed up by the 5-year forward Mental Health Task Force review. It's to think about developing competencies in leading service change. So if this is about a programme of change, it's a really difficult thing to do anyway. It's really, really difficult to do within NHS, local authority. Voluntary sector sometimes have a lot more capacity to do this than huge lumbering NHS and local authority services. So it's about developing those skills in order to lead and facilitate change. And it's also giving knowledge about, so it's not a very academic course, it's a very applied course. But in order to be able to apply things, you need to know what you're trying to apply. So part of it is providing managers with the theory of change. We take a very systemic view of change, so in understanding organisations and contexts from a very systemic perspective. It's understanding the research around implementation. Again, as with therapy, we know there are lots of ways of trying to implement change which are more or less likely to work, and we want to impart some of that knowledge as part of the course. But the largest part of the course is about working with the other people who come on the course. So for the other managers and leaders who come on the course, it's always an incredibly rich, experienced group of people who have been doing this or part of this for many years. And a large thing about what we try and do on the course is to allow people with very sort of big amounts of experience in this field to talk to each other and to learn from each other. That's kind of the philosophy of the course. It's the philosophy of all the courses, frankly, and it's the philosophy of IAPT. That's why we're learning collaborative and not just taking individual services and trying to improve them one by one. We learn so much by talking to each other who are doing this. The competencies throughout the course are to be able to create a vision, a strategic vision for implementing the CYP IAPT principles, developing capacity to improve services through the CYP IAPT principles, delivering better evidence-based practice, embedding outcome monitoring and feedback throughout the course of therapy. So how do your managers facilitate you to be able to implement feedback throughout the course of an intervention, because that's what one of the things that we know makes a big difference. Ensuring that participation is central, so ensuring that in any part of the change process, young people and families' voices are heard within that. And one of the things we haven't mentioned yet is that as part of our CYP collaborative, we employ a group of young people, young advisors, who are there to input into all the different training courses, as well as to do a huge amount of other things as part of the collaborative. So we try, we don't do it as well as we can, and I'm sure neither do you, because participation and improving participation, it's an ongoing process, a journey. But thinking about where are the voice of young people and families in all these bits of the process. And it's also thinking about developing multi-agency pathways. So Future in Mind said, and the government task force report before that said, the problem with child mental health services is that they are disintegrated. So there's lots of good work going on in individual pockets, but they're not working together in a way that will make services more effective and efficient. So part of the thinking is about how do you manage to bring these things together? What role do your managers have, or if you're a manager, in order to facilitate that integrated delivery? Thinking about how to manage services that are implementing CYP IAPT and the ability to work with others. So a lot of change can't happen just by you. Change only happens when you influence other people. And that's all about building relationships. How do we do it? We provide this theoretical framework to understanding organisations and change. Say a large theme is systemic around that. It's thinking about what are the specifics of CYP IAPT, what are the objectives, what are your objectives of change. And a lot of this, you may notice, is based on the same kind of skills that you do if you're working therapeutically with someone. So if you're working therapeutically, the things you need to do is to know what's the problem that you're trying to change, what's your goal for change, where are you trying to get to, coming up with a plan for implementing that change, which would be the therapy. In this case, it's about facilitating change at a service level. And how will you know when you've got there? How will you know when you've gone as far as you can and it's time to stop and get on to the next thing? In terms of input, it's 12 days over the year, spread out approximately monthly. This will remain as a one-year course. And I say within those days, they're split. So the morning is the whole group together. There's some didactic teaching, but a lot of discussion all the way through the morning, and then splitting into smaller tutor groups in the afternoon, where you get to work with colleagues much more intensively on change management projects. And the projects themselves, so the assignments, are closely related to what people would be doing anyway in their day job. So the assignments are about describing how you're implementing or trying to implement change across your bit of the system. And I think the other thing that's important to know is that those of us who are involved in this course are people who've also been trying and struggling and failing and being somewhat successful in doing this. So we're not a bunch of academics teaching you just the theoretical view of change within mental health services. We're all people who've been, say, doing this for a number of years. I was trying to tot up in my head how many collective years it would be for the four of us delivering this, and it's way over 100 years of experience in trying to do this kind of stuff. So we know that trying to implement change in the NHS, local authority, voluntary sectors, is difficult and messy. It's not at all straightforward. It's hugely frustrating, but there are still things that you can do to kind of create gains, and if you apply some ideas in a particular way, you're more likely to get there than others. That's all I'm going to say. I can catch up with people afterwards individually if people have particular questions, but are there any particular questions now from either people who think they might want to do this, or from those of you who are doing the therapy course to think, what message do I need to go back and give to my manager?
Is this probably the kind of roles that people are tending to sort of benefit most in the course, and within sort of team managers,
Yeah.
service leads or others who can be some responsibility can for other areas as well?
Okay, so it's certainly aimed at people who are at that, the minimum is a sort of that team leader level or clinical lead level. So it has to be someone who has influence on some bit of the system. Whether it's the people who benefit or the service that benefits most, so the higher up someone is within the organisation and the bigger influence they have, and so if someone right up here understands this and is supporting people to do it, then it has biggest impact on the system. But sometimes if you're right up there, you're not having direct contact with the people who are the therapists and the supervisors who are having to implement change in their own work. So it works at different levels. We've had commissioners come on the course, and that's been hugely beneficial for them in terms of understanding how child mental health services work better by talking to colleagues, and also if you've got commissioners completely supporting this, then that has a big influence. So you may want to go back and advise, say to your commissioners, hey, you might want to kind of consider this. And it's a two-way thing. So if you're not at the top of the tree, part of your job will be to influence the people above you and educate and inform, as well as facilitate and support the people elsewhere in the system. Anything else? Yes.
After seeing all these things, I'm just excited. I'm not quite sure what I want to do, but if you do the supervisor course, can you also do the management one?
Not at the same time, but we do have people who've done the supervisor's course and then come on to do the manager's course. I'm sure if I didn't want to do it the other way around, but there's no reason we have, right? There's no reason why not.
You can do it either side, you can do it either way round.
Yeah. You may want to think what fits best with you or your organisation now, and so it's helpful to have someone within the organisation who understands the kind of big picture. So you may want to think about doing the managed leadership course first, and then, but it's an individual thing. We're very happy to talk to you and help you kind of think about what's the best way to do it.